you ever wondered how complicated and confusing things work? Like take virtual reality, for example. It's super confusing. I can't even figure out how they do it. When we can't make sense of how something works, we usually get curious. And when that curiosity can't be satisfied, we become frustrated. Let me give you an example. I was really interested in the planets and the way everything revolved around when I was very young, but I didn't understand. So when I got into that class when I was in high school, that frustration finally dissipated. Maybe you've wondered how God and faith work. If God is out there or what God is doing or not doing, maybe faith in God can be confusing because we can't actually see God or feel God's presence, so it's hard to understand how God works. We may go through hard times and feel that God isn't there for us. Maybe we may, as Christians, acting in the way that doesn't align with what we think God stands for. Some of us may wonder if God is worth our time and attention. We have a hard time trusting or believing that because we can't see or understand how God works. Some of us feel that we do everything a Christian is supposed to do, but we still have questions and doubts. Doubts and questions can ultimately grow our faith because they can motivate us to learn more about God and understand who He is. There's this guy named Philip, and Philip was one of Jesus' closest friends. He walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, and paid attention to everything that He did. To Philip, Jesus had a unique understanding of who God is and how God works. So Philip asked Jesus if he could see God and experience God the way that Jesus did. And Jesus answered, "Don't you know me, Philip? Even after I have been among you for such a long time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." Jesus basically said, Philip, if you want to know God and what He's like, look at me. Jesus said that everything He did and said was exactly what God would say and do. Jesus shows us who God is and how God works because He is God. Before their conversation, Philip may have had a hard time understanding God because he couldn't see and feel God. But after Jesus' response to Philip, he understood that there was a way to know more about God and how God works. To know what God is like, all we have to do is look to Jesus. Jesus is how you get to know God. One of Jesus' closest friends, Matthew, recorded a conversation Jesus had with some important people. And it says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments." Jesus said that what's most important in life is loving God, loving people, and loving ourselves. That's what's in first place. One way we can love God is by getting to know God and learning more about God's heart, actions, character, and work. Jesus shows us everything that we need to know about who God really is. Jesus is how we get to know God. Jesus is the answer to all of our hard questions about God. We can make getting to know Jesus first place in our lives by learning more about Jesus and what He did, what He said, and how He lived by reading the Gospels. Listening to someone you know who loves Jesus, ask them to share a story and what they've learned about Jesus. Make learning about God a first place priority this week, regardless of where you're at with your faith journey. As we get to know Jesus more, we will get to know God in a way that changes our lives and our faith. Jesus is how you get to know God, because Jesus is God.